Hi friends, most of you watch my channel without subscribing. Please subscribe if you like my stories. Have a good rest. I first met Vanessa on a sunny spring day in May when some co-workers set us up on a blind date. I was so nervous when I walked into Antonio's Italian bistro and saw this striking brunette sitting by herself near the back, absent-mindedly swirling the straw in her drink. She glanced up as the hostess led me over, and her whole face lit up with a dazzling smile. I still remember thinking she had the most mesmerizing hazel eyes I had ever seen. We hit it off right away, talking and laughing for hours about everything under the sun. She was so easy to talk to, and we just clicked on every level. Turns out we both loved action movies, amusement parks, and Italian food. We even liked a lot of the same classic rock bands from the 70s and 80s. Over the next several months, Vanessa and I went on whirlwind romantic dates all around Philadelphia. We walked hand in hand through Fairmount Park, rode the roller coasters at Hershey Park, and danced the night away at a Journey concert. I knew she was the one for me when we took a weekend trip to New York City together. We sat overlooking the picturesque skyline one night at a jazz club in Brooklyn. When I looked into her sparkling eyes in the candlelight, I realized I wanted to marry this woman. 6 months after that fateful first date, I took Vanessa back to Antonio's where it all began. After dessert, I got down on one knee and proposed right there in the middle of the restaurant. When she joyfully said yes, the whole place erupted in cheers and applause. We spent the rest of the night calling all our family and friends to share the exciting news. I couldn't wait for Vanessa to meet my best friend growing up, Brandon. He was like a brother to me, and I just knew they would hit it off too. One weekend a few months later, the three of us met up at a Phillies game. We joked and talked non-stop through the whole game, and Brandon and Vanessa really seemed to connect. I was thrilled they got along so well. Over the year of wedding planning, the three of us started hanging out more as a group. We would go bowling, catch movies, or just chill out tossing a football in the park. Brandon kept saying how perfect Vanessa was for me and how lucky I was to have found my soulmate. When I asked him to be my best man, he gave me a big bear hug and said he was honored. The week leading up to the wedding was a complete whirlwind. Vanessa spent every free minute finalizing details with the florist, caterer, DJ, and venue. There were so many little decisions to make. I just tried to stay out of her way. Each night she came home later and later, stressing over place cards and decorations apparently. Looking back now, I realized she was actually sneaking off to hook up with my so-called best friend. The night before our wedding, Vanessa and her friends went out for a wild bachelorette party at some male strip club. I never did get the full story of what exactly went down that night. Meanwhile, my groomsmen took me to a college basketball game, and then out for drinks at McGillen's old ale house. I remember being disappointed when Brandon texted he couldn't make the bachelor party. He claimed his aunt ended up in the emergency room that afternoon. Family comes first, so I didn't think much of it at the time. But now I realize he was busy hooking up with my fiancée instead. I stumbled home around 3 a.m., expecting to crash on the couch since Vanessa had banned me from seeing her the night before the wedding. But when I walked into our bedroom, there she was curled up under the covers sleeping like an angel. I knew I should probably leave, but I couldn't resist brushing a stray hair off her face and kissing her forehead gently so as not to wake her. As I crept back out, something shiny on the floor caught my eye. I picked it up to inspect it more closely. It was an ornate cufflink, definitely not my style or anything I recognized. A knot formed in the pit of my stomach as I frantically tried to rationalize how it got there. Had another man, maybe even my best friend, been in our bedroom, doing unspeakable things with my wife to be just ours before we were to exchange vows? My heart racing, I paced back and forth clutching that damning cufflink. Part of me didn't want to jump to conclusions without proof, but deep down, I already knew the truth. Just then, Vanessa's phone lit up with a new message. Before I even thought it through, I grabbed the phone off the nightstand and opened their text conversation. My worst fears were confirmed. Explicit messages about their secret rendezvous that night and plans for future hookups. Scrolling up through the texts, it was clear this emotional affair had been going on for months right under my oblivious nose. Vanessa had been sharing intimate details about our relationship, sexting back and forth, and meeting up anytime I traveled out of town for work. I sat there on the edge of the bed with her peacefully sleeping beside me, overcome with grief and anger. The woman I loved with all my heart, my soulmate, my everything, had been unfaithful our entire relationship. With the one friend I trusted most in this world. I had never felt so betrayed in all my life. Somehow the next morning I pulled myself together and went through the motions of getting ready for the shan of the wedding. My mind was swirling, and I thought about calling it off right then and there, but this public humiliation seemed more justified. When Brandon approached me outside the church, I casually asked about his missing cufflink. The color drained from his face, and he stammered some lie about it getting snagged on his bag at the airport. Then I slowly pulled out the one I'd found and watched him squirm. But I didn't let on yet that I was onto his dirty secret. I stood at that altar like a fool as Vanessa floated down the aisle looking radiant in her gown that probably cost more than my first car. All I could think about was her deception, letting me plan this whole elaborate wedding, spend all this money, while screwing around with my best friend. Well, her sweet act was about to come crashing down. When it came time for the vows, I announced I would be sharing some special texts instead. Vanessa's eyes grew wide with horror as I read out loud raunchy sex between the two people I loved most. Guests gasped and murmured in shock, while my cheating bride begged me to stop. I scrolled through months of messages, exposing their lies and betrayal in front of our friends and family. People began getting up in disgust and exiting the church. Vanessa collapsed in anguished sobs at the altar, all her wicked plans unraveling. I saw Brandon make a quick exit, chased by several furious groomsmen. Finally gaining closure after having my heart ripped out, I walked away from the wreckage without a backwards glance. Let Vanessa try to pick up the pieces of her once perfect image, now in tatters. I heard she slumped back home in utter disgrace, considered damaged goods by anyone who knew her former reputation. That painful day was a harsh wake-up call, shattering my naive trust in people. With time, I hope to gradually open myself up to finding real love again. My loyal friends have been a blessing, helping me heal and reassuring me there are still good people out there. But I'll certainly never see relationships the same way again after Vanessa's ultimate betrayal. After calling off the wedding from hell, I holed up in my apartment for weeks, dodging incessant calls from what seemed like everyone I'd ever met. My phone blew up with voicemails from shocked relatives wanting details, friends checking in on me, and more than a few calls from curious reporters looking for a juicy story. The media caught wind of the scandalous situation after one of the wedding guests leaked the story to a local tabloid. Before long, our embarrassing drama was blasted all over the internet and talk shows. I declined all interview requests. I just wanted to be left alone to nurse my broken heart in peace. But sadly, you can't control where the rumor mill spins. Every time I ventured outside, I could feel the stares and hushed gossip swirling around me. My co-workers awkwardly avoided the subject, tiptoeing on eggshells around me at the office. They had all RSVP'd yes to witness my doomed wedding, so I'm sure they felt guilty by association. The company president even called me to his office to personally apologize, despite the fact he had zero involvement. While I appreciated the sentiment, it only served as an unwelcome reminder of the humiliating situation. The wound was still so raw, I couldn't handle talking to anyone about it. My apartment stayed off most days as I lost myself in mindless television, trying to numb the pain and anger I felt. Late one night, a knock at my door jolted me from the stupor. I looked through the peephole to see a disheveled Vanessa standing there crying. My first instinct was to pretend I wasn't home, but some morbid curiosity made me open the door. She looked like a shell of herself, makeup smeared, tangled hair, clutching soggy tissues. She whimpered how sorry she was, how much she missed me. That getting caught was the biggest wake-up call. I coldly replied she didn't seem to mind all the sneaking around when she was actually doing it. Vanessa begged for forgiveness, for us to wipe the slate clean and start fresh. As if I could ever forget the web of lies and months of betrayal. I calmly told her we were done for good, then firmly shut the door in her face. I ignored the muffled sobs and banging that followed until she finally gave up and left. It sounds harsh, but she didn't deserve my sympathy after everything she put me through. Even groveling at my feet couldn't undo the damage. Some stains simply can't be washed clean again. With each passing day, moving on seemed a little bit easier. The sharp, debilitating pain slowly transitioned to a lingering, dull ache. I threw myself into work, regularly pulling 12-hour days to distract myself. My boss happily let me take on extra projects, probably trying to redeem himself for the whole wedding fiasco. Despite my crazy work schedule, my friends refused to let me wallow in isolation. They showed up unannounced and dragged me out for dinner or to play basketball. Even when I protested, their loyal friendship provided a glimmer of hope during my darkest days. About 2 months after the disastrous non-wedding, I finally agreed to meet up with Brandon in a very public place to get some answers. He squirmed under my hard gaze, clearly ashamed by his actions. I point-blank asked him how long the affair had been going on. Reluctantly, Brandon admitted they first got flirty about a year before the wedding. A playful friendship gradually crossed boundaries until they crossed the point of no return. He couldn't pinpoint exactly when feelings developed, but it started when I was away on a 3-week work trip. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, so they say. By the time I returned home with no clue, their relationship had evolved past innocent texting. Brandon insisted it was never meant to hurt me, that he got caught up in the excitement and didn't fully realize the gravity until it all came crashing down. As if that excused his conscious choice to sneak around with my bride-to-be. I appreciated his honesty, but firmly told Brandon our friendship could never be repaired. He was dead to me. He apologized profusely, but I held up a hand to stop him. We had nothing more to discuss, now or ever again. I walked away without looking back, finally closing that painful chapter for good. In the weeks that followed, I heard through the grapevine that Vanessa moved across the country to escape the shame and scrutiny. Last I heard, she was living with some want in California. Good riddance. Maybe a fresh start out there would help her grow into a decent human being, but I highly doubted it. I decided to look for a new job and leave my own tarnished memories behind. While interviewing with a company in Atlanta, I met a wise, caring woman named Julia who worked in HR. We really hit it off, and she seemed genuinely interested in me as a person. After accepting the new job, Julia and I started spending more time together outside the office. It was refreshing to get to know someone without my sordid history looming over me. I was cautious at first, but slowly opened myself up again to the possibility of love. She knew my past, but assured me it didn't change how she felt. 6 months later, I'm in such a better place emotionally. The wounds have gradually healed, leaving only thin scars as reminders. I can look back objectively and see the red flags, the things I should have questioned. But dwelling on the past won't help me, and focus on building a better future now. Julia has faith in me, despite what I've been through. I finally believe I deserve to be loved purely and completely. She's shown me there are still genuinely good people in this world, even when you've lost hope. I thank God for bringing her into my life when I needed it most. No one can fully predict the future or avoid ever being hurt. But I've learned so much from my past failures. Now I can give my refined heart freely to someone I trust without reservations. Julia was worth the wait.